begin this morning not by listening, but by joining right in. I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and we will sing hymn number 153, Oh, I Woke Up This Morning.
Please rise in body or spirit.
Good morning and welcome. As we begin our service, will you please turn off all electronic devices? I invite you to enjoy the chapel in the back of the sanctuary and to note joys and concerns in the book there. If you have little ones, we have a nursery downstairs. And after our service, I invite you to join us for hospitality and to greet one another. Finally, please note the announcements in your order of service. Many, many ways to become engaged in this vital community. And I'm going to call attention to one. It's the big event. And you have a flyer, I believe, in your order of service. So please, we hope you will all come and join us for this wonderful event. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Jan Vanderhoof, and I'm the president of the Board of Trustees here at South Valley. We are a covenantal rather than a creedal church. This means that from the pulpit we want words spoken personally and sincerely, but we have no required beliefs or creeds. Instead, using our 7 principles to guide us, members covenant with each other, mutual support. So, in the same spirit, I give our traditional Sunday service greeting to all who enter here. This was written by Reverend Melanie Morell Ensinger. Come, come, whoever you are. You are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter how you came here, if you came alone or with others, you are welcome here. No matter whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears. You are welcome here. come here with an open mind, a loving heart, and welcome hands, then you are indeed welcome here.
Good morning. Today I begin with words that have supported me during this week of William Stafford, a pacifist and a poet. Yes, it could happen anytime. Tornado, earthquake, Armageddon. I add mass shooting at a school. It could happen. Or sunshine, love, salvation. It could, you know. That's why we wake and look out. No guarantees in this life. But some bonuses, like morning, like right now, like noon, like evening. We gather together this morning after a difficult week. A mass shooting that left 17 teachers and students dead, and waves of grief shaking their community and out into larger and larger rings like those undersea earthquakes, until we feel them here. And last night, Lou and I watched one of the most beautiful sunsets we have seen in Utah. Did you see it? I believe that in churches all over this country, prayers are going out for the comfort of the people feeling such loss. Prayers are being sent up from pulpits to the heavens for help, for answers. In our Unitarian Universalist community, prayers are also rising. And there is a strong belief among us, regardless of what we believe about God, that we are the hands that must reach out, and that our brains, some believing through the help of God, that our brains must come up with our brains and hearts, I add, must come up with some amazingly smart and loving solutions around the complex issue of guns in this country. And on this third week of Black History Month, we gather to celebrate what one woman did. How her hands and how her fine brain and her deep faith held the answer to the prayers of many. And to begin and gather her, who I have felt her around me in the past months, and she is here today. Some of you don't believe that, but I do. We are going to rise and sing, rise in body or spirit, and sing the anthem that most expresses the hopes for this nation in the African American community. But first, I invite you, let us greet one another. Then we will rise in body and sing, body or spirit and sing. Number 149.
Last time I saw Mary Lund, for those that don't know me, because I keep forgetting to pick up my name tag. Before I tell you why I'm here, I'm going to tell you why it's a good thing you're here. South Valley has a lot of parties, and one of the parties we have coming up is the big event, and it is super fun. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. But one of the things that would make it a lot more fun is if you could donate to the liquor fund. Parties are way more fun when there's liquor. So what you can do is you can donate cash or check to Camus Dewey or to Jen Stewart. So RSVP to Jen, it's here on the bottom, and everybody come and let's have a super fun party. I arrived home from work on a late summer day to have my 16-year-old daughter relate the story of making lunch for my 7-year-old, or for her 7-year-old brother and his friend. During their lunch, my son's friend asked him if he was a Christian. I'm certain he had no idea what a Christian was. So he replied, no. Well, are you a Mormon? Again, no. Well, what are you then? I'm an American. After hearing this story, I decided we needed some religion in our family. During preschool and kindergarten at Challenger, my son had become best friends with a young boy with 3 moms. 2 of his moms were Abby Maestas and Cindy Vargo. Abby had talked about her church, South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society, from time to time, so I decided to check it out for myself. I began by attending alone, coming in late, and leaving a few minutes early so I wouldn't have to talk to anyone. When I was comfortable, I began bringing my son. My daughter had returned to New Jersey to live with her dad. After my son and I had been attending for several weeks, he then turned to me and asked, so what are we now? Just like so many in our congregation, I began coming so my child would have a religious identity in our broader community. What I didn't realize at the time is how much I would benefit also. My son Stephen is now nearly 32 years old. He can sometimes be seen attending our Christmas Eve service. I, on the other hand, have missed a few Sundays. Over the past few years, I have been actively involved in the Welcoming and Membership Committee, Social Justice, Interweave, and my true love, which has been teaching the junior and senior high school youth. And along the way, I said I would not tear up. Just for fun, I gained another true love. My husband back. I found him here at South Valley too. Thank you. And lots of really good friends.
Okay, I would like to invite the young and young at heart to join me up here for our time for all ages. Come on up, Maddie. Maddie will be the first. Okay. I have a question for all of you up here and all of you out there. Have you ever heard of the Golden Rule? Have you heard of the Golden Rule? What is the Golden Rule? Can you tell me, Maddie? Treat others as like you want to be treated. Okay, does anyone know a different version of the Golden Rule? Karma. Okay, so in Hinduism, that is one way to look at the golden rule. Kindness, yes. Did you have an idea too? Starts with a B. P. A parable? No? Okay. That's okay. If you think of it, let me know. So there are a lot of different versions of the golden rule in different world religions. In fact, I have a little poster here that I can share with you if you'd like to see it later about all the different ways that it is expressed in different world religions. And basically, Maddie is right. It is about treating others the way you would like to be treated. So treat others the way you would like to be treated. Some religious traditions say it in a more negative way, like don't do things to people that you wouldn't want to done to you. But it basically amounts to the same thing. Treat other people the way you would like to be treated. Well, I learned recently that there's another rule besides the golden rule. Oh, this is the P word she was thinking of. What is the rule, Libby? The platinum rule. Have any of you heard of the platinum rule? Okay, the platinum rule. There's just one. Do you have something that, oh, you know what it is. Do you want to tell us what it is, Libby? Treat others the way they would like to be treated. Okay? Treat others the way they would like to be treated. Now, I understand the golden rule. I lived that a lot in my life. I'm going to tell you a story about that. At Christmas time, my family makes lists for what they would like to receive as presents. Does anyone else do that? Do you make a list of things you might like to receive? In our family, we're celebrating solstice, so we give solstice presents. But it could be Christmas. Maybe you could even make a birthday wish list, right? Okay. So one of the people in my family, who shall remain nameless, but if you want to know who it is, he's in the back of the station. One of the people in my family put on their solstice gift list that they would like a pair of slippers for solstice. So I saw that on the list, and saw those slippers, and I was out shopping at Target, and I saw the best slippers ever. Do you see these slippers? Do you see the slippers? What's on those slippers? Pokemon. They are covered in Pokemon. Because you guys know, I like to play Pokemon, right? So I bought these slippers for the person who had put slippers on their list. Do you think that I was obeying the golden rule and treating someone the way I would like to be treated? Heck yeah! I like these slippers a whole lot. But you should have seen his face. This is the kind of slippers he wanted for solstice. Do you see the difference? Luckily, the next box that he opened held these slippers. Okay? Because those first slippers, I was just really trying to be funny. Because I do that sometimes. And I wish I had a photo of his face. Pokemon slippers. So that's our example for today of how to live the platinum rule. How to treat others the way they would like to be treated. It's a little bit harder. You have to take the time to find out how another person would like to be treated. Instead of assuming that they're just like you and that you want the exact same things, you have to talk to them and communicate and find out what it is that they really want. And so that's your challenge for this week. We're going to talk about the platinum rule some more in the coming weeks. But your challenge this week is to find a way to treat someone the way they would like to be treated. Now, please join me in heading downstairs for our Sunday school classes.
And please notice that the quilt is now up. giving you a message. I invite you to breathe in, let us breathe together, and remember this earth that is under our feet that has held us all of these years. Let us consider the earth beneath us, the sky above that was such beauty last night, last evening. We come here today holding both joys and sorrows. This sanctuary still reverberates with the embodied loss of the deaf community during the service for Lori Quigley's sister. And around all of our personal sorrows and joys, our hearts are in mourning over those who died in Parkland, Florida, and those who died in an earthquake that was somehow, we didn't think about that because this other tragedy was so huge. At the Florida high school, teachers and students were among the dead. There was a soccer player, a student named Wak, and a trombonist in the marching band. 8 of the victims were girls and young women. 9 were boys and men. They ranged from 14 years old to 49. I was going to ask the choir, but they're needing to sing after this. So I would like 17 people to come up and light a candle as I read the names. Just, this is your chance to, I love this community because this is a place where we can mourn together. So please come up and light a candle as I say the names. Scott Bagel. Alyssa Al-Hadab. Martin Duque Anguiano. Nicholas Torres. Aaron Price. Jamie Gutenberg. Christopher Dixon. Luke Hoyer. Kara Loughran. Gina Montalto. Joaquin Oliver. Elena Petty. Meadow Pollock. Alina Ramsey. Alex Schachter. May these lights remind us of those who died this week. May we not let fear guide our lives. May we too find ways of transforming our fear into action, into love, into stretching across that great divide in our country. May we hold these who are gone and all those connected with them in our hearts and minds during this week. And may we consider how we can be a part of a way of healing this deep, deep wound in our country. Amen, and may it be so.
I neglected when I welcomed you to tell you my name. For those of you who don't know, I think most of you do. I'm Ellen Pezant, and I've been a member of this church of South Valley for 2 years when we moved from Boston, Massachusetts. So we'll also be back here. I bring you now words for our offering. In the spirit of serving our wider community, it is our practice to share a worship service offerings with a charitable organization whose works align with our values and principles. January and February, we will donate half of our offerings to the Healthy Environment Alliance of Utah, also known as HEAL Utah. Harnessing the power of grassroots advocacy and smart policy research, HEAL engages in the legislative and regulatory settings to champion clean air and clean energy and protect Utah from nuclear, toxic, and dirty energy threats. I'll tell you, my eyes are watering because of the air now. Will you join me in saying the words printed in our order of service? We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share in the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts. Heal Utah, thank you very much. I'm also more than about, I believe, in your order of service.
These words sung in Spanish are about not fearing. song recalls the time when I returned to our village in Japan after a long journey, and the cherry blossoms were in bloom, and Lou and I stood in front of our home, and a wind took the cherry blossoms that were across the valley and lifted them up into a cloud, and that cloud moved across the valley and landed on our hands and on our heads. When we jump off that holy mountain, I have learned that it is not whether you fall into the valley or angels' arms lift you up, that it is actually both, that we are bruised from those jumps off the holy mountain, and that there are many hands that hold us up. 7 years ago, before coming to Salt Lake City, a man at one of the booths at our Unitarian Universalist General Assembly told me the story of Jesse Daniel Ames, one of his wife's ancestors. I kept her story and the contact information in my purse, which is why I never clean out my purse, no matter what. It has all kinds of things from different places to remind me of something I must do when I have time. I did not feel like I could adequately give that story time until this year. I called up the number on the card, and she was so happy to hear from me and sent me all kinds of information about her ancestor. Her ancestor, Jessie, was born in Texas. She was an avid suffragette, and she was appalled by the mob violence and cruelty of lynching, which during her early life was a common occurrence and well publicized, not only in this country, but all over the world. There were photographs of someone who was lynched and the people around them sometimes cheering and laughing. That was one of the faces of America. But it was especially the face of the South. And this week, as we have been mourning the loss of teachers and students at the hands of someone with an automatic weapon, those deadly mass shootings have become more imprinted as the face of America. Just as the photographs of lynching spread far and wide throughout the world, footage of the deadly mass shootings at our schools are being broadcast on televisions from the boot of Italy down to Cape Town, South Africa, to the northernmost towns of Siberia. It is not America's secret. I looked at that flag at half-mast and felt such grief, and I also felt this is not who we are. I think that we feel today as helpless as Jessie felt in the 1920s and 30s. Yesterday, I read that gun sales go up when we talk of gun control. And that made me think about the op-ed I wrote about gun control. It is a complex situation that takes all of our understanding and knowledge, and I believe inspiration. The students are thinking they may have a solution. Jessie felt, as I'm sure many of you feel today, she had that strong feeling that I just spoke of. She thought, this is not my South. This is not my country. And today, thanks to Shannon's collaboration, we are beginning on this journey to bring Jesse Daniel Ames' story out into the world. For Jesse has much to teach us in 2018.
Is this good? I speak to you today not only as a member of this congregation, as a historian, and as an activist, but as a woman who is intimately familiar with the weight of this heritage, as a daughter of the South, as a descendant of plantation owners, as a child who has heard every pejorative that has ever been applied to poor white Southerners. Every single one of these different parts interacts differently with the story of Jesse Daniel Ames and the Association of Southern Women for the Prevention of Lynching. It's a complex relationship, but I think that it is in that complexity that the light of understanding has the space to shine through and to teach us. May you live in interesting times is an apocryphal saying. It's a curse you lay on your enemies. And we, my friends, live in interesting times. At a nexus in history where everything is changing, is in flux, at a moment where it feels like we're sitting on a precipice, deciding which way we as a state, as a country, and as a world will choose to follow. And it's easy, as Patty said, to feel helpless, to feel hopeless, unsure what, if anything, we can do to influence for good the final outcome. But when I become overly discouraged, I take comfort in the fact that we are not the first to live in interesting times. We will not be the last to live in interesting times. And there is much to learn from those who not only survived their time, like Jesse, but who answered the call and successfully moved the needle toward what we hope will one day be universal equality and equity for everyone. Less than 100 years ago, and I want you to remember that as we speak, that this was less than 100 years ago. This was barely 75 years ago that our country was in the thrall of an interesting time. And into the course of this history exploded Jesse Daniel Ames, who, with her Association of Southern Women for the Prevention of Lynching, dared to take on something even powerful politicians backed away from: the culture and society of the Southeast that reinforced in perpetual cycle the idea that white Southern men had the God-given right to murder black men with impunity. In her time, she was successful beyond anyone's wildest dreams, to the point that in 1940, the South had its first year in written white history where not a single lynching occurred since the Civil War. An entire dissection of Jesse and the anti-lynching movement would take several Sunday sermons. But today, I just want to focus on the strategies that she employed and what we can learn from them for our interesting times. And I also want to be clear that this is not a thorough critique. Jesse and her movement were not without flaw. They were products of their time, influenced and sometimes still bound by the societal attitudes around them. And from our standpoint in time, we can easily see the errors, much as our descendants will easily see ours. But within these limitations, Jesse and the ASWPL were truly extraordinary. But how did she do it? And that's the real question, right? How did she make this change? The first thing that Jesse did was to take responsibility and to act. After working to gain white women the right to vote, in the early 20s, Jesse began to work with the Commission on Interracial Cooperation, an organization formed in 1919 in Georgia from various religious and social associations to oppose lynching, mob violence, and peonage, and to educate white Southerners concerning the worst aspects of racial abuse. Never forget that regardless of how it's been rebranded in the last couple of decades, social justice is part of the rich prophetic tradition of spirituality. We come from a long line of activists. It was there that Jesse was first exposed to the literature exploring the causes of lynching, a phenomenon that every Southerner knew intimately. After a period of decline, lynching saw a sudden rebirth in the wake of World War I and the economic stress of the Depression. While a growing body of intellectuals had begun to decry lynching, even the most liberal of whites still defended its use as an acceptable extra-legal measure in what they saw as the most heinous of crimes, namely the rape of white women. The CIC, in an effort to better understand the phenomenon, established a commission to study lynching. The study uncovered that while the assault was the cause of lynching most fixed in society's mind, the actual accusation of assault was present in less than 25% of all lynchings. Jesse realized that the supposed protection of white women's virtue was being used as an excuse to justify the lynching of black men. She's not the first person to make this connection. Her movement was built upon years of established work by black women who had already done this analysis between racial violence and sexual exploitation, and who had for at least a decade begged their white sisters to stand with them to stop lynchings. But she was the first white woman to answer that call with organization, to recognize she and other white women's complicity in lynching, and accept that it was their duty to act in concert to end it. In her memoirs, Jesse said that women resolved to no longer remain silent in the face of this crime done in their name. Jesse quickly became disillusioned with the pace of the CIC in addressing lynching. As far as she was concerned, those men were content to study and publish papers. Jesse and the women who followed her were not. Or in her own words, the men were out making studies, so the women had to get busy and do what they could to stop lynching. Like Jesse, and what was ultimately nearly 40,000 Southern white women who stood with her, it was not enough to recognize injustice as horrible. It is not enough to want something to change. To begin, it is absolutely vital to accept that it is our responsibility as beneficiaries of a system designed to keep our privilege intact, to act from our place of privilege to destroy that system from the inside. We cannot expect those with less privilege to do all of our heavy lifting. Jessie worked locally through grassroots efforts. She, as a Southerner, understood intimately the South, and especially the rural South's aversion and distrust of outsiders. After all, it had been Northern carpetbaggers that had economically preyed on the South after the Civil War. It had been the North that had levied punitive legal measures against the South that had ultimately laid waste to the economy and destroyed the livelihood of the entire South, even the poor sharecroppers who had been dependent on the largesse of plantation owners even before the war, even for children who hadn't even been alive when it happened. So in the beginning, the ASWPL did not appeal to the federal government. They did not bring in scholars or learned people. Instead, they sent out a call through their connections that they had formed in the suffragette movement to the women attempting to secure a woman from every Southern state to attend their initial conference. These women then spearheaded the movement in their own areas, making connections based on understood backgrounds and heritage. While the core membership of the ASWPL would travel around the South to make speeches, no woman worked permanently in an area where she was not local. In this next part, this led naturally to our next strategy, which was to educate and meet people where they were. Lynching was almost exclusively a rural occurrence. Then, as now, there was a disdain and suspicion between country dwellers and the intellectual elite who had recognized the threat of lynching to social order and built up elaborate social theories around it. Jessie and her followers circumvented that divide by translating that social analysis into a theory of race violence that could be readily understood by her constituency. She taught her ladies to read their audience and tailor their message in response. We can't, she said, talk to people except in the mental images of the kind that they understand. She helped women make the connection between their own struggle for self-determination and the excuse that men were using to lynch. It did them no good to allow men to act like they had to protect them, because if they gave them control in that area, they gave them control in every area. In the end, she said, we are bound together in our fates looking for our rights. The message, then, was to answer the question of what can women do? And in answering that, they gave women concrete steps that they could take in their area to stop lynching. The message was simple. White men are using you as an excuse for lynching, which threatens both our moral standing and our social order. Your job is to make clear that you find that unacceptable. The how of that was our next strategy, which was to use the double-edged role society had given them to bring pressure to bear. While Jessie privately rejected much of the prescribed role for women, she identified that their greatest chance of success lay, at least initially, in using and manipulating those expectations. They were Southern ladies to the hilt, and within those expectations lay their power. After all, women, society, and religion said, were the moral centers of their homes. Therefore, it was not only right, but one could say it was their God-prescribed duty to speak out against this moral ill. If the expectation was that women were supposed to keep their homes and general sphere of influence in line, then by God, they were going to do it. As white Southern women, they also had enormous privilege, and Jessie recognized that. They had immunity to act in situations where black men and women would encounter hostility or violence. This isn't to say that they were completely free from it. The women of the ASWPL took to hiding correspondence from critics who would threaten violence and other lewd and now predictable acts. They would hide those from their husbands so that they could not be forbidden from their work. Because remember, at that time, most of them still had to have their husband's permission to even do their activist work. But the very chivalry that they were fighting, the chivalry, Jessie said, which has been pressed like a crown of thorns on our heads, afforded them certain protections, and they exploited those to further the anti-lynching movement. While much of their work was done behind the scenes, women on occasion had real visceral contact with active mobs. And on occasion, they faced off and stood them down. For example, when a black mill worker was in danger of being lynched, it was the wife of the mill owner who locked the mill and held off a mob until he was taken into custody. And there were times they had to put their money where their mouth was. When two women who had signed an anti-lynching pledge were assaulted by a man, a lynch mob predictably formed. Those two women stood and pleaded with the mob to stand down and to let the legal system take its course. They also effectively organized their newly acquired right to vote into a voting bloc. State leaders would visit sheriffs to to ask for them to sign anti-lynching pledges. In exchange, the local members of the ASWPL would campaign for their re-election. Alternately, if they did not, the ASWPL were very clear about the consequences of that too. By 1936, nearly 900 sheriffs had publicly indicated their opposition to lynching and pledged to stand firm against mobs. This was a marked change from an era where law enforcement often joined the mobs once they arrived. But one of the most radical strategies of the women's anti-lynching movement was the shift to recognizing the underlying power structures that reinforced, maintained, and suddenly encouraged the social norms that created conditions that were ripe for lynch mobs. Traditionally, lynching was seen as a problem of the rural and uneducated. Poor white men whose ignorant state led them to seek violence as a means of symbolic release. But Jesse began to question who actually benefited from what sociologists began to see as almost ritualistic violence. It wasn't poor Southerners who were still being driven off farms and losing jobs and scrabbling for survival. No, it was middle and upper class whites who benefited from the distrust that kept poor white and black men and women from banding together to fight for economic justice. In fact, in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, there was a strong populist movement that drew the poor of all races together to lobby for their rights as sharecroppers. When this movement threatened the entrenched social order is when we, in retrospect, can see the shift to lynching as a method of controlling the black population and the characterization of black men as sexual predators. The ASWPL realized there was little to be gained in shaming individual people rather than attacking the power structure that had manipulated the poor and uneducated for their own gain. They put out what is arguably the most unequivocal call-out of their time. The resolution read in part, "We reaffirm our condemnation of lynching for any reason whatsoever. We declare as our deliberate conclusion that the crime of lynching is a logical result in every community that pursues the policy of humiliation and degradation of a part of its citizenship because of accident of birth, that exploits and intimidates the weaker element for economic gain, that refuses equal educational opportunity to one portion of its children, that segregates arbitrarily a whole race in unsanitary, ugly sections, that permits the lawless elements of both races to congregate in these segregated areas with little fear of molestation by the law, and finally, that denies a voice in the control of government to any fit and proper citizen because of their race." I believe that we're guilty of the same fallacy now, of shaming and attacking whole segments of our population because it is easier and in some ways more cathartic than tackling the root causes, a toxic power structure that benefits from keeping us locked behind our own empathy walls. Ultimately, the ASWPL made it socially unacceptable and economically damaging to support and engage in lynching. Their campaign, which combined elements of education with grassroots activism, changed the cultures and attitudes around them, which in the end resulted in widespread Southern support for federal anti-lynching laws. The impact of the groundwork they laid was invaluable, and until recently, nearly forgotten. There's so much more I can say about Jessie and her Association of Southern Women for the Prevention of Lynching. I could probably do an entire presentation on how much we can learn from their mistakes. But in the end, I take comfort in the fact that even such a complex, multifaceted, flawed woman in movement could still take action and make change that continues to grow and reverberate even now. And as we again face the quandary of institutionalized white male violence that would use the facade of protection of the vulnerable to decry any attempts to address or curb it, I hope that in some small way, this story comforts and energizes you you as well, and lets you see that yes, a solution is possible. Thank you.
We're hoping that this will someday transform into a one-person play. That was our hope for today, but it was so much to really understand. And I hope that this has planted a seed in this community, in that with the violence this week, it is so easy for us to get on, and I sometimes think we're guilty of that. We stand on the side of love, and over there are the hate people. And what she saw was that she had to be inside that group and understand them and have conversations so that real change happened. And I love the stories all through this, which was one of the stories I heard at the General Assembly, how the ladies would dress up in their hats and their white gloves and go to the sheriff's office and say, if you let this lynching happen, we are not going to vote for you. And we're going to tell all our friends not to vote for you. So I think we need to find out where our power is. And this has caused me a lot of thought. So thank you. And let us each find the ways that we can turn those weapons of war into plowshares. Let us rise in body or spirit and sing. Where's the number? 162.
Really short intro, so let's sing right away.
We close with that awareness, that uncomfortable awareness that there are no easy answers, but there are complex and interesting answers that might work, that will take great leaps of faith, that will take falling on the stones and waiting for those angels to help pick us up. May we have the courage to consider what our minds and hearts, where they are leading. Amen, and may it be so. Before we extinguish our chalice, I invite any of you who are visiting, if you would like to introduce yourselves, to do so at this time.